It is, as event director Shane Oley described it, a deeply painful moment for everyone involved. The organisers of the Dragon's Back race, Ourea Events, have closed their doors. But if I'm honest, part of me isn't surprised. If you've spent any time in the UK mountains over the past 15 years, you will have felt the ripple effect of what was announced yesterday. The standard bearer for expedition-style racing in this country, Ourea Events, has folded, and that means all their events for 2026, including the Dragon's Back, the Cape Wrath Ultra, the Northern Traverse and the Scotland Skyline, will not take place in 2026. Will they ever take place again? So I think we need to have a serious conversation about the realities of independent ultra running, the UTMB phenomenon, and the problems of trying to run a business, make money, bring customers in and give them a satisfying experience so they want to come back, and balancing that against your personal and professional, ethical and moral principles. In 2024, I took part in the Cape Wrath Ultra, but I had also volunteered the year before, so I'd been there 2 years on the run and seen the event from both sides. And when I was a volunteer, the sheer scale of effort that it took to create and make that moving village function really hit me. But then it hit me even more when I ran the event, the sheer absurdity of the scale of the whole thing. It was without doubt a world-class experience, well-drilled, well-organised, safe and professional. But from a purely common sense point of view, it didn't seem to make any sense at all. Looking at the huge scale, all those marquees, all the tents, the enormous number of hired vehicles involved, the enormous energy generating systems involved to make that village function for what was essentially around about 200 runners. That's all. To make the maths even more difficult, that number of 200 runners is deceptive. A large proportion of the field is made up of volunteers who have gained a free entry from working at the event the year before. I was one of those. I simply cannot afford to pay the asking price of £2,000 for a slot on that starting lineup. And so me, along with many others, were non-paying customers. That means the actual paying field is even smaller. You're running a massive high overhead machine on the cash flow of a fraction of the people standing on the start line. It might be a great way to build a community, but when the community itself is so small and the running field is so small, your margins are going to suffer. Up until recently, Ourea Events have been spending money still. They recently moved the Skyline Scotland event to an entirely new location. That must have been very expensive in terms of resources and logistics. And they've also recently hired a new marketing person who ironically used to work for UTMB. So it's not as if they haven't been spending. Let's talk about food at Ourea Events. Their decision to go 100% plant-based is admirable, and I admire a founder who wants to stick to their principles, but I'm absolutely convinced that put off potentially hundreds of runners from entering Ourea Events. When you're asking somebody to pay up to £2,000 for an entry fee to push their bodies to the limit, they're going to want the food they feel comfortable with. By mandating a plant-based diet, they are excluding hundreds of runners, hundreds of potential customers. It felt like Ourea Events was prioritising its own internal philosophies or ethics, or that of its founders, against the desires and needs of its customers. In a struggling economy, you simply can't afford to give somebody a reason not to enter. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, if you're finding it useful or interesting, please do consider subscribing to the channel. And if you want to contribute more, you can become a member from as little as £1 a month. Please do go and have a look at membership of the Film My Run channel to help us continue doing what we're doing. Can I even accuse Ourea Events of being overly professional, too professional? There's a policy of biodiversity cross-contamination where when a runner comes in at the end of the Cape Wrath Ultra day, they would dip their feet in a tub of water. Now this is supposed to prevent pathogens crossing between valleys. But the reality was, when we were running the day, we would cross between multiple valleys and across multiple streams during the day itself. We only dipped our feet in water at the end of the day. And to be perfectly honest with you, as a volunteer, we saw those tubs just simply being tipped out at the end of the day when they were too muddy. It felt like performance theatre. It was a Rolls-Royce level of compliance that simply added a massive extra load of logistical cost and effort and very little value to the runner's experience. Now, I know many of you out there are going to be straight down into the comments blaming the corporate giants of UTMB, but look, it is far too easy to cast UTMB as ever as the villain of the piece. People are voting with their wallets. There were less than 200 people at the Cape Wrath Ultra when I did it. There are thousands upon thousands of people wanting to run UTMB events. And that's not UTMB's fault. If people didn't want to go to their events, they wouldn't sign up. And it's not as if UTMB don't have biodiversity policies, gender participation policies, travel policies, environmental friendliness policies. These are all in place. It's not like UTMB aren't doing anything, but they are also a business and they are entitled to make money. How they're going about it might be questionable in some respects, but you can't simply blame them for the problems other race companies are having. Ourea were trying to deliver high-end, professional, international level spectacle events whilst limiting the numbers due to sticking to their commendable environmental principles. Trying to fund that massive machine with a niche community of a few hundred people was always going to be a dangerous place to be. Shane's statement mentions that they are in discussions with their advisors in the hope that they can undergo a reorganisation of some kind. There is already speculation that Ourea Events will take a year off in 2026 and relaunch under a new banner in 2027. In the corporate world, this is called phoenixing. A company folds, the debt is wiped clean, and then the same directors start up again with the same assets under a new name. We've been talking about ethics for the entirety of this video. It would be very difficult to stomach to see Ourea Events disappear, leaving participants, local businesses and suppliers out of pocket. For then, next year, Dragon's Back to simply reappear under a slightly different name, using a legal loophole. Now, I genuinely do believe that Shane Ollie will want to do right by people who've trusted him. Hopefully, any relaunch of Ourea Events will take into account creditors and people who've been left in the lurch by events they've paid for 2026. Relaunching is fine. Relaunching off the back of people who lost money in 2026 would be a problem. I mentioned the Skyline Scotland event earlier, and ironically, I think if Skyline Scotland had been sold perfect as it was for UTMB, then they might have been able to use that money to keep the rest of Ourea Events afloat. Whether Shane ever got to that level of discussion with UTMB, I don't know. They certainly talked to Ourea Events a lot. Whether they ever offered anything for Skyline Scotland, I don't know. Whilst I feel really bad for Shane and Ourea Events, they were always a little bit of a tribe within a tribe, maybe even a little bit cliquey. Certainly niche and dedicated, but inward looking, and maybe the arbiters of their own downfall in being almost too professional and too principled for their own good. The era of the independent professional expedition race has hit a bit of a wall in the UK. And for it to change, for it to grow again, one of two things has to happen. It either has to increase its prices, so you'll be paying the same as MDS or the Rat Races or the Four Deserts events, thousands upon thousands of pounds to enter an event, or you have to increase the numbers and sacrifice some of your principles. Whatever happens, however the model develops in the future, let's hope it's done with the integrity that the ultra running community deserves. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the start line next time.